All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. To those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. We've been hosting these webinars at least once a month on various topics and deep dives into our specific capabilities. So feel free to check out our website for previous video recordings, including this one. In today's webinar, we'll be exploring how to manage medical device design controls more efficiently using modern requirements. Our speakers today include myself as your host, Ambreen Sharif, Bob Savelson, our SVP of Sales and Marketing, who will be providing us with a brief introduction, and Mao Mao, our client success consultant, who will be giving us a demo of modern requirements and its capabilities. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the question box and we'll get to them either during or after the presentation today. We also have Asif Sharif on the line, who is our Chief Technologist, to answer any of your questions towards the end. If this webinar has piqued your interest at all and you'd like to receive a free trial of Modern Requirements, you can visit the link on the screen at modernrequirements.com/try-now. We will also be sending around an email with the video recording and another opportunity to receive a free trial later today. So please stay tuned for that email. All right, over to you, Bob.
Thanks, Ambreen, and welcome everyone. There's some very familiar names in the audience, so we're looking forward to speaking with you. So today's medical device companies are being challenged like never before. The market for medical devices is growing at approximately 5% compounded annually each year. And KPMG in a recent paper suggested that this market will reach about $800 billion in 2030. The industry, of course, is highly regulated, and these regulations are constantly evolving to help keep patients safe. Manufacturers really must become more agile in their approach to bring products more quickly to market to maintain their competitive advantage. Another aspect of the landscape that you all work with is hardware complexity is increasing and software inclusion is really ubiquitous. Moving forward, smart services will form a new battleground, and all of the data collected by these devices will feed those smart services. As the market moves forward to accept these challenges, people managing requirements and quality are really looking to move from the collection of isolated legacy tools that are managing their requirements and quality processes, including Microsoft Office. And we are really seeing a digital transformation taking place to address this situation. So before we begin describing how our product, Modern Requirements for DevOps, adds automation and auditability to the product development lifecycle for medical device companies, let's first define a key aspect of the product development lifecycle, and that is design controls. Included in a design history file, these controls must be carefully developed and presented for internal audits to the FDA before any new product can be presented to the market. This is really a 7-step process that begins with user needs in the design inputs and ends when the product is transferred to engineering for development. And it is constantly updated thereafter through a change management process. Closed loop traceability is really a key to ensure coverage of all of the design inputs and approvals for each of the items. So our tool is a browser-based tool, for those of you not familiar, and it's built into Microsoft's Azure DevOps service in the cloud and server on-premise. The combination of modern requirements and Azure DevOps really supports the entire product development lifecycle. And the tools can be auto-synchronized with dozens of other tools that may exist in each company's technology ecosystem. The tool really delivers value to many different roles in your product development lifecycle, as are shown here. There are many function points that add automation to really reduce the cycle time for each of the participants. The tool includes many layers of functionality, providing choices to really help support our client's product development lifecycle. And many people ask, where does modern requirements start and where does Azure DevOps end in its functionality? And this chart really is designed to talk about the specific incremental functions that modern requirements delivers in extending Azure DevOps. So we're very careful not to duplicate what Microsoft has built into Azure DevOps because it's a fantastic product. One of the key differentiators and added values in our product is the SmartDocs capability, which allows users to develop requirements in an online document authoring environment, providing context to the creators of the requirements, as well as to the consumers of the requirements throughout the product development lifecycle. And it really helps to bridge the gap between document and digitally managed requirements. And there are many other capabilities, including trace analysis and baselining and online review management, that are unique to modern requirements. Simply put, Azure DevOps by itself cannot really support the creation of design controls, the management of risk, and the compliance with the FDA's 21 CFR Part 11 for approvals. And that's where modern requirements really shines. Our tool does support a growing number of standards, including the aforementioned Part 11, as well as ISO risk and quality standards. It also automates the risk management function by adding a calculated field capability in our tool called MatCal that Mal will show you in her presentation. So this is not meant to be a deep dive into each of the modules of modern requirements, as we have done in previous webinars. But we will show you specifically how the tool supports design controls. And Mal will show you in her presentation how all of these functions come together in our software shortly. But before we do that, we'd like to better understand our audience. And we have 4 polling questions to help us to do that. So let me begin by sharing the first polling question. question is, how many tools do you currently use in managing your design controls? Okay, well, thank you for your responses. It looks like well over half, almost 60% of the people use 3 to 5 tools, and a small percentage use over 5 tools, about 5%, whereas approximately 40 use 0 to 2 tools. So let's move on to the next question. And this question asks, how long would it take you to prepare for an unexpected audit? So we have quite a few, about 70% people have contributed. And so far we have 28% that say more than a week, 34 that say less than a week, and 7% less than a day. So those certainly are the superstars in this audience. So let me close that poll and move on to the next. So I talked about how the changing landscape in in medical device industry is really forcing companies to be nimble. And this question asks, how nimble are you today? I have about half the people answered. Okay, so I have over 70% that answered. So far, 60% of the people say that they are moving from a V model to Agile gradually. 21% say that they are following a V model today, and 21% also report that they're following Agile practices today, which is kind of what we had expected. I'll close this poll and open the last one. This talks about what is the most stressful task when you are working with design controls. Okay, we have over 70% of the people that answered. And the results are in. So right now, 10% of the people say design, definition, and authoring is their most stressful activity. 3% say design review. 28% say documenting and reporting. And as expected, almost 40% say traceability analysis, which can take weeks and weeks per project. And 23% say change management. So thank you very much for responding to those polls. Hopefully that provided some insight of what your peers are thinking as well. So I'll close that. And I will now pass the presentation over to Mao, and she will present how we support design control specifically in the various modules of modern requirements for DevOps.
Hi, thank you, Bob. Hello, everyone. So it's a very nice, wonderful opportunity to demo how to use modern requirements to manage requirements for your medical device design control. So the complexity of medical devices technology is growing almost exponentially. So at the heart of this complexity lies a fundamental question: what are the real requirements for such a system, and how to manage those requirements in an efficient and well-organized way? Or you might ask, what if change happens? So those are key steps of medical devices design control and their associated tasks. So based on this structure, I am going to demo you key functionalities of modern requirements, which will help your team build medical devices with less stress. So in the user needs and design input stage, the key task is to describe how your device is going to be used and who's going to use it, and what important features and attributes should be considered, or what other products or platforms will your device interact and interface with. So in modern requirements, we can create different work item types for the functional requirements, performance requirements, or interface requirements to elicit those key tasks. So for example, in this project, I use the compliance template to manage the design history, design specification, FMEA risk, mitigation requirements, and other types of requirements. So we create this compliance work item template in collaboration with some of our medical industry clients. So if we open up a work item, for instance, an FMEA, we can see all the attributes under this work item type. So we can see function and purpose, potential failure mode, potential causes, and the other attributes. And if we go back and open up another work item type, for instance, user need, we might see totally different attributes. So those work item types and their attributes are fully configurable and customizable based on your needs. And also the link between work items are important concepts in requirements management. So we can manage relationships between work items. So we can link, delink, and change link type from here. So if you like to use this compliance template with all the work item types and attributes in your project, please email us at info@modernrequirements.com, and we are happy to share the template with you, and also we can help you install it. And in modern requirements, we offer several ways of authoring requirements. So we can create requirements in the work items module, or we can almost do the same thing in the backlogs module. So those are Azure DevOps native modules. Or we can do that in SmartDocs, which I'm going to show you more details in the documenting and reporting part. And also, if your new device shares some components with your previous design, you can reuse your requirements very easily in our platform. So you can create a library of work items for the reuse purpose to avoid most of the redundant work. We have several approaches of work item reuse, which were actually covered in one of our previous deep dive webinar. So the webinar recordings are located under the Help Center of our website. Since today we have a lot more content to cover in this webinar, I'm not going to cover more details of those basic requirement authoring modules or the work item reuse approach. However, I do want to mention another two functionalities where you can leverage to elicit requirements for your new device. So first, let's go to the FAQ module. So we know that requirements can start as an abstraction, and we know how stressful it might be. So here we provide templates with over 3,000 predefined questions, including the ISO 13485 Medical Devices Quality Management System standard, and also the ISO 14971 Medical Devices Application of Risk Management standard. So the idea behind is that asking the right question can help make requirements more specific and clearer. So I think this module is especially useful when defining requirements for the user need and design input. And of course, you can also create your own FAQ list. So for each question, we can link with existing work items to make sure it is addressed. Or we can directly create new work items from here. So for instance, I can create a new, let's say, non-functional requirement to address this accident report question. So ideally, each of the questions you and your stakeholders selected or created should be covered with corresponding work items. So one last thing I want to cover in this section is the email monitor feature. So we know that well-structured interviews can be highly effective in collecting requirements from healthcare professionals, patients, and sometimes the sales and marketing team. So whoever you invite to participate in the design process of your new device can now join the project discussion or even create requirements in your projects without the need of a modern requirements license through this email monitor feature. Your participants can simply send an email to your configured email address. Then our system will convert the email to a work item in your project. So this is one of the 4 features the MR services functionality provides. And later on, I'm going to show you the other 3. So far, we have covered how can you use modern requirements for requirements collection and authoring process. And now let's jump to the documentation and reporting part. So we know that compiling for design history file, which means documenting for user needs, design input, design planning, design output throughout the product development process can be overwhelming. So you need a tool to document your design in a centralized place. So next, I'm going to show you the Smart Doc, which is one of our clients' favorite features. Smart Docs bridges the gap between requirements and documenting, and it allows you to display your requirements in a document view. So here in this Smart Doc, we have some work item. For instance, we have some user need, we have some system requirement, functional requirement, FMEA risk, and some non-functional requirements. we can see that a Smart Doc is a collection of work items. It is a documenting tool, at the same time a requirement authoring tool, which means that you can create new work items directly in Smart Doc interface. So Smart Doc is a more comprehensive authoring environment, allows you to display and edit the rich content of your requirements. So in Smart Docs, we can edit the content in the standard editor, which is provided by Azure DevOps. Or we can do almost the same thing in our Smart Editor, which is a Word-like editing tool. Also, images, built-in tables, and even built-in diagrams can be added and displayed. And you may notice those numbers, 1, 1.1, 1.11. So those numbers are automatically assigned by the system to indicate the hierarchical position of this requirement in this document. So we can configure the hierarchical structure of this Smart Doc in the Meta Template Designer. So the benefit of doing so is that you will have a well-designed document structure regarding each of the different document types. So what does this mean? So for example, for your design input or output documents, you can, for instance, only allow those requirement types at each level. On the other hand, for your design verification and validation documents, you can add test cases and bugs. And next, you might ask, so how about changes made to the documents? So I think there are two key tasks. First, changes should be documented. Also, changes should be correctly synchronized. At Modern Requirements, every change you make to your requirements is captured as a revision record, which I'm going to show you later on in the change management section. So for any important changes you make to this document, you can actually save a version of it. So previously, I made some changes to this document, and now I can compare two versions of this document to see what changes have been made. So for the documentation purposes, I can generate a change report in either a Word or PDF format. So let's try to generate a PDF difference report. And also, at Modern Requirements, the version problems you might experience before are wiped out. So changes you make to a work item are synchronized everywhere it's used immediately. So there's no copy and paste or file transfers are required anymore. And now when the document is done, we can directly download this document in a Word or PDF file. And if you want to further configure the format of your report, you can use the Smart Report feature to generate a Smart Report. The Smart Report is a reporting tool, allows you to format your report based on your liking before actually generating them. So at here, we provide some default style formats, which you can use here. So in this case, I'm going to use a style template I created for this demo. And now let's try to generate a Smart Report. Now you can see how this Smart Report looks like with each work item in a row and their attributes in columns. So the format of this document is highly customizable. which means you can configure which attributes you want to show and what style you want to apply. And you can also sort and group the work items based on the value of a particular attribute. And after that, of course, you can choose to save this report to a Word, PDF, or HTML format. And plus, if you want to add your own static content, for instance, header, the footer, and your company logo, you can upload a Word template to this place or use our advanced functionality of our Smart Report feature. So as we can see that Smart Docs and Smart Report are built-in documentation and reporting feature. Nearly every single design control element contains some activity that needs to be documented. All of this goes into the design history file and can be done here in a highly organized way by using modern requirements. So before the final reporting, one more task is needed, so which is the design review. So during design reviews, you and your project team are formally reviewing and agreeing to each of those key deliverables. So you need to have a record to prove that all your design controls have been included as part of a design review. At Modern Requirements, you can initiate a review for a single work item, multiple work items, or this entire document. And users can directly create or complete a review request within our platform without sending extra files through emails. So as a review initiator, I can initiate a review for this document through here. So there are two types of review events, review or approval. For example, you can finalize defining the user needs by sending this document to some of your stakeholders for reviewing and then ask for final approval. So now let's go to the review module. So as a review initiator, I can see all the reviews I sent out and their status. So if I change my role here as a reviewer, I can access the review request assigned to me from here. In a review event, I can add comments for each of these work items, and also I can see and comment on other reviewers' comments here. And as an approver, I can add comments and then either approve or reject a single work item, or I can do the same thing for the entire package. And the approver can connect the e-signature to selected reviews to achieve the 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. So when initiate an approval request, the review initiator can just make sure this ask user for password and approval is checked. Now the approver will need their e-signature to approve or even reject a work item. And with just one click of effort, all historical review results could be generated in an audit report in PDF or Word format. And by doing this, every single review record is documented in a well-designed audit report format. So next, I'm going to talk about the traceability analysis. Modern Requirements enables you to create and update a traceability matrix in just seconds, so which is a key task during the design verification and validation process. So we provide two types of traceability metrics. The horizontal metrics can be used to gain full end-to-end perspective of your design project. For example, in this case, we can see that this user need with ID number 2 breaks down to one system requirement, 2 functional requirements, and all the way to the test cases. FDA states that testing requirements should be traceable to the system requirement and design. And then you can simply make one click to document this traceability analysis in a Smart Report or Excel format. And create a horizontal matrix just takes 15 seconds by choosing the requirement type for each level. And another type of traceability matrix is the intersection matrix, which is a 2x2 cross-reference chart between 2 types of work items. So in our case, it helps confirm 100% of mitigation requirement coverage for the FMEA risks. And another type of or another use case is that having all the functional requirements on one dimension and all the test cases on another dimension to make sure 100% of testing coverage. And creating an intersection traceability matrix is very easy as well. So we can simply go to this editor and choose the work item types for each dimension. And also for each dimension, you can just select a subset of work items you want to focus on. And also, there will be no synchronization issue since any change you make to a requirement is updated simultaneously. So next, we are going to talk about change management. And I'm going to say this is the most important section in this demo because changes occur inevitably. If we can't have an easy process to establish whether all affected components have been identified over time, changes to the system would tend to decrease its reliability and safety. So what we can do in modern requirements for change management? In fact, we've already covered some. So in traceability metrics, we can easily get an estimation of what will be impact to the downstream requirements if some changes happen to the upstream requirements here. Or in SmartDocs, we can compare 2 versions of documents. And in addition to that, I will demo you another 3 features. First is the baseline. So a baseline is a basis for comparison between work items over a period of time. So it's considered as a snapshot of requirements at a point in time. So each design project should define a baseline strategy that includes defining the baseline in terms of creation, frequency, content, and documenting. At modern requirements, you can baseline a single work item or a query of work items. So I have created 2 baselines for a simple component design. And now I can simply compare my 2 baselines to see what has changed. So in this case, we have some work items changed, some were added, and also some were removed since the time I created the first baseline till the second baseline was created. And of course, we can drill down to individual work items to see what is the change. For instance, when the change occurred, who made it, and what is exactly the change. And also, as I previously introduced, every time we change a work item, a revision record is created against this work item. So we can always compare 2 revisions of a work item to track the change. So as you can see that a baseline is a vehicle for communicating changes in the detail of requirements to your interested stakeholders. And also, don't forget to document those changes. You can simply make one click to generate a difference report for the comparisons of two baselines, or you can use Smart Report to create a report for those baselined work items. So next, let's look at the impact analysis. So now let's say I made some changes to, or I want to make some change to this system requirement IABP SR1. So can I quickly identify elements that need to be ordered? Yes, so we can simply run a impact analysis against this work item. And we can see all the possible direct impact. And then I can make necessary changes to the impact work items directly from here. Or I can further drill down to another level of impact analysis because of that new change. And last one I want to cover in this part is the suspect link. This is also included in the MR services feature. The idea is that when certain criteria are met, for example, if someone make any change to the description of this work item 2628, and the linked work item will be flagged as suspect. So your team can check associated requirements once before proceeding to the next step to see if any updates are required. And suspect link is fully configurable, which means you define the precondition criteria, the triggering event, and which work items will be marked as suspect. All right, so we're almost at the end of our demo, but I still want to demo you another feature which can be used in risks and hazard management, which is the MATCAL. So we know that risks and hazard have their associated deciding factors. So let's look at this case. So in this case, the risk score is associated with severity score and the probability score. So we can use the MATCAL feature to automatically calculate the risk score based on those two inputs. So now when the severity score is S1 and the probability score is P1, then the calculated risk score is green. So we can make some changes to it. Now, let's say for severity score, let's change it to S3. And for the occurrence score, let's change it to P4. And we save it. Because we've heard our clients used external tools like Excel to calculate the score, and then they manually type in the score here. So with MATCAL, we can do automatic risk calculation to avoid manual efforts, and more importantly, to avoid the possibility of introducing incorrect numbers to your design project. And now let's refresh it. We can see the automatic risk score is updated. And what I can do next is actually I can go to the query module and I can try to generate a report, a risk management report for my 4 work items. And now I can see the calculated risk score with other attributes displayed here for those work items. Okay, so that is the MATCAL. And I think one thing we haven't covered yet in this MR services module is a customer ID. So the idea is that, so in addition to the default ID assigned to each work item, we can have a customer ID information, which could be more descriptive. For example, when you have thousands of work items in a project or cross project, like most of our medical industry clients do, the descriptive ID can quickly tell you information like the work item type, the project origin of this work item, and those IDs are automatically assigned by the system based on your configuration. Okay, so this is a demo part. And now I will hand it over back to Bob for the Q&A part.
Thanks, Mel. So we do have a number of questions that people have posed either during the webinar or at the beginning when they registered for the webinar. And we will go through them individually. So one of the questions that was posed by someone who registered asked about data migration from IBM DOORS to modern requirements. And this is a very common usage scenario. We're working with multiple clients today with our partner, OpsHub, who is the creator of the OIM Sync Bridge. And this bridge syncs information between DOORS and Azure DevOps by simply mapping it and then bringing the information into the appropriate work items in Azure DevOps. So the bridge can be used for continuous integration, but what more people are doing today is migrating the DOORS content into Azure DevOps, so you have a historical audit trail and you can reuse legacy content, and that's facilitated through modern requirements and our partner OIM OpsHub. The next question that we have is there an integration with Azure Test Lab for design verification, test planning, and execution? So this is a very timely question because that's something that is handled today, but will be handled in a different way. So I will ask Asif to answer this question because it is part of our upcoming release of Modern Requirements 2020 Update 1.
Sorry, Bob, what was the question?
Is there an integration with Azure Test Lab for design verification, test planning, and execution?
Yes, yes, thank you. So folks, we are actually coming up with a major new capability in our next release, which is going to be in the next few weeks. And what that does, so today you can export data for reporting, such as test steps, or you can export test results, but just the latest test result. Now, what we are doing is that in the Microsoft Test Manager database, Microsoft keeps information such as links between test plans and test suites, or test suites and test cases, or it keeps information as test runs, or the results of the test run at the step level, but those are not work items. So what we have done is we have created virtual link types and virtual work item types that will give you access to that information and thus be able to report on it using Smart Report or using the traceability analysis capabilities. We're also adding a Smart Report option directly in the Test Hub now. So you can generate your reports on your test plans directly from the Test Hub that would in turn show you the test suite, the test cases, the test results at the step level, and so on and so forth. So this whole idea of creating an abstraction of virtual work item types and link types will continue to be expanded into other areas of Azure DevOps so that you can report on a lot more things than are really work items. So we'll be getting that out soon. And of course, when you see it, let us know your feedback, and we will do a webinar just on that topic once we release it.
Thank you, Asif. The next question is, what is the interface to be used in order to connect modern requirements Azure DevOps with an IBM tool, specifically PTC Integrity? So I'll take that one. The interface is the OIM Sync Bridge, which is a separate piece of software. You can use the Azure DevOps REST API if you want to build that yourself, but our partner Ops Hub has built a very high fidelity synchronization that does have a PTC adapter and an Azure DevOps adapter, and similar to what I described for migrating content from doors, you can synchronize in the background at client-defined intervals the specific information that you map between those two. So I will reach out to you, Rashmi, about that. The next question is, I'll pass to Mao. What you demoed, is this out of the box version, or is it a customized version for a specific customer? So Mao, could you answer that, please? You may be on mute.
Okay, so do you mean by the interface?
Yeah, the user interface. And I guess the question wasn't specific. The product itself was an out-of-the-box version, and then maybe you can talk about the configuration you did for the demo.
Okay, so almost every user will see the same type of interface, but we can do some configurations in the admin panel area, and also what modules you can see depends on your license types. For instance, some users will not have access to the MR services module because that is for the Enterprise Plus license users. Yes, but most of the features like Smart Docs, Smart Report, and those are available to most of our users.
Thank you. Yep. Hopefully that answered the question. Here's another question. So we have customized our work item template, test cases, test plans, or changes necessary to make this work with modern requirements. So I can take that question. Modern requirements reads your process template and inherits all of the work items and their properties. So you will see all of your customized work items in modern requirements, and you can work with them. What you might need to configure would be Smart Docs, that if you added new work item types, the Smart Doc meta template that governs what you can put into a Smart Doc needs to be adjusted to add those custom work item types so that you can see them and they're allowed in the Smart Doc. Okay. The next question. Can modern requirements populate a list of records? not sure I understand that. Modern requirements populate an inventory of validated systems. I'm sorry if you could elaborate on that. I'm not sure I understand what that question means.
Yeah, just one thing. I mean, if you're simply trying to import data in, and your data was, say, in Excel, you can use the Team tab, connect to your project, and import the data into your project, and then do the needful there, if that's your question.
Okay. Are there any other questions that people have at this point? There was one question about how to control document changes through a change control process. When I make changes to a design input requirement. So we addressed that in the demo that Mao did. There are a variety of change control processes that our customers follow. Having change request work items in your process template is one of them. If you are creating smart docs, any changes to a smart doc is captured in a version because each time you would update a smart doc, it is versioned. And then you can compare versions to see what's changed. And all of that is historical and auditable. So hopefully between what Mao showed you and that answer, we've provided a complete answer to that question. Does anyone else have questions at this point? We're nearing the top of the hour, so we have room for a few more questions. There's one that maybe we didn't answer here. Is there an approval routing with multiple people for requirements documents and require an e-signature as default without having to check off the e-signature box each time? So Mao, is that something that you could answer?
Yeah, so every time if you want to initiate a approval event which requires a signature, and that checkbox needs to be checked. So otherwise, so the approver won't need a signature to approve or reject the work items.
Actually, I'll just add something to it. So there is, under the administrative area, you can define that you always want a signature, and in turn either hide that field or just set that as the default. So if you go at your account level admin settings under review tab, that is where you can see that option. So there's several things you can set the default value and choose to either hide it or show it. And this way, if you always do e-signature, then that's a good way to do it. But if you do it most of the time, then set the default to e-signature, but then don't hide the field, show it so people can change it if they need to.
And there's one last question that was submitted, which is really a foundational concept within design controls, and that's the immutability of work items if they're approved regarding trace and reporting. So Asif, if you could address that question, please.
Sure. Yeah, so a couple of things. One is when you create a baseline, then in that baseline, you can always see data as it were, at that point in time when the baseline was created. So it's sort of a snapshot, if you will. In the other case, when you version a smart dock, again, that's a snapshot in time. So when you open up a version 5 of a smart dock, which you created in February, then when you open that up, it'll be exactly the same as when that version of smart dock was created. There is, however, another option you have. So in Azure DevOps process template configuration, you can configure that when a given work item is in a given state, let's say approved, then it cannot be modified. Okay, and so you can set up all the fields to be read-only when that state is true. You recently, there's another option added in there where you can say who can change the state. So you could say that only a given role can actually change the state from A to B. This way, that record is pretty much locked down until the authorized parties can change the state from, say, approved to open again, and then others can modify that particular work item.
Well, thank you for that response. I don't see any other questions. Oh, there's one. We'll do this as the last one. And is there a way we can set up a sandbox for modern requirements to demonstrate it to the users in our company? And I'll take that one. Yes, absolutely. We have a variety of ways you could set that sandbox up. If you're using Azure DevOps Service in the cloud, if you have an existing production account, you can easily set up a sandbox account, and Microsoft provides accounts at no cost for up to 5 users. And if you simply send us the URL for that account, we can enable our software in it, and you can demonstrate from Azure DevOps Service. The second and easier way is we have a virtual environment that we can set up for you in Azure using Azure DevOps and modern requirements. And you tell us what process template you would like, whether it's Agile or the compliance template that we offer. And we can provide you login access for 30 days for any number of people in your company. So hopefully one of those two works for you. And of course, you could install it on site if you wanted to, if that's how you're using Azure DevOps today. But that middle option of setting it up in our Azure evaluation environment requires no work on your side, and you'll be good to go as soon as we give you login credentials. And of course, we would be happy to organize a demonstration online for you and for whoever in your company would like to see it. Simply reach out to whoever is working with you at Modern Requirements, or send an email to info@Modern Requirements, and we'll set you up for a demo as well. I think Asif has posted the try it now in the responses to the questions. So certainly go to our website, click on that, and fill in the form, and we'll set up that demo environment for you. I don't see any other questions at this point. So we would like to thank you for your participation, and we're really pleased to see all of the questions and interaction that's come through. We hope that you found this webinar valuable. And Asif, do you have any closing comments?
I do. So folks, just to let you know that the medical device company and this sort of compliance types of industries is a big part of what we do and we support. So probably about 50% of our user base is involved in either medical devices or some other types of compliance-based reporting, authoring, review management, and so on. And so for that reason, we continue to invest a considerable amount of effort for R&D, that is, into things like review management, smart docs, trace analysis, baselining. And in due course, we're actually working on some interesting AI tools that should be quite helpful for folks as well. And the test management API that we are releasing with vNext, there's a whole bunch of additional things we'll be doing there too that would be helpful for all of you folks. So we have got a very vibrant R&D team that is certainly talking to many of you that are on this call and others to make sure that model requirements with Azure DevOps becomes the single source of truth and the system of record that you can use without having to use 10 different systems, but do everything in one integrated environment in an easy to use way with a lot of automation and intelligence therein. So thank you folks for all your input as to how we can make model requirements better, because that is how we do our R&D. So with that, I wish you all the best, stay safe, and talk to you folks real soon. Bye-bye.